Today's episode is a very special episode in honor of Pregnancy and Infant Awareness Loss Month. I speak with Shay about her multiple pregnancy losses and her pregnancy that was impacted by anencephaly. I understand if you need to skip this episode. While it's a sad story, it is a story of courage and selflessness. I'm grateful to this mom for sharing her story with us. Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Bold Little Minds MomCast, a podcast where we talk to incredible moms who share their unique journey to motherhood, practical tips, and some of our favorite low prep activities so you can enjoy that hot cup of coffee. I'm your host, Krissy. I'm a mom of 2 boys. I'm glad you're here with us, so pop in your earbuds and let's have some fun. Welcome to the Bold Little Minds MomCast. My name is Krissy. I am a stay-at-home mom to 2 young boys, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. Today, I come to you with a very special episode. In honor of Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, our friend Shay is joining us again to share this part of her story. Unfortunately, infant and pregnancy loss is all too common. Either you or someone you know likely has been affected by this. In the United States, about 1 in 175 pregnancies result in a stillbirth. 1 in 4 pregnancies end in a miscarriage. 2% of pregnant people experience repeat miscarriages, and the infant mortality rate varies by ethnicity, being as high as 10.9 per 1,000 live births. Shay shares with us her story of repeat pregnancy loss, but also her story of a pregnancy she carried to term with a baby who had a fatal birth defect. This is an inspirational story of courage and selflessness. I certainly understand that this episode is not for everyone. It's not easy for moms to think about pregnancy and infant loss, so I completely understand if this is an episode you need to skip. Today, 3 versions of this episode are available. You can find the full episode as well as the episode broken up into 2 parts, the regular abridged version that's going to be released on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all of those, as well as a bonus episode. All 3 of these versions are available on my Substack, which is free to access. You can subscribe for free and have the episode sent directly to your mailbox with whatever versions are released on video and audio, as well as a text-based blog summary of the episode. However, you don't have to sign up for the subscription to access the bonus episode or the full-length episode on my Substack. You can find the link to the Substack in my show notes. Shay's son had a condition called anencephaly. In the United States, anencephaly affects 1 in 10,000 newborns. Because most pregnancies with anencephaly end in a miscarriage, it's impossible to know the true number of babies that are affected by this. Anencephaly is a type of neural tube defect that happens when the neural tube doesn't close completely. Almost all babies born with anencephaly die shortly after birth. Globally, it's estimated that the prevalence of anencephaly is 5.1 in 10,000. I'm very grateful that Shay decided to share her story with us today. It's important to understand the reasoning behind the decisions she made and how it impacted her all around. It's also important to know that since that pregnancy, Shay had 2 healthy pregnancies who now are live, healthy baby boys. It can feel so lonely to be impacted by pregnancy and infant loss. If you or someone you know has been affected by anencephaly, just know there are many resources out there available to you. And Shay is more than happy to talk to you if you want somebody to speak with. Again, I understand if this episode is not something for you and you need to stop listening partway through. Either way, please take a moment to hug your babies and the babies in your life a little tighter. And I thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Little Minds MomCast. I am here with Shay. Shay was on our show before, and I'm so happy to have her back. Shay is a mom of 4, 15, 13, 3.5, and 1.5. She is an entrepreneur, and we are just so happy to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back. It's always a blast, and the before and after chats are they're amazing. I live for these chats, so thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, me too. And I agree. Our before and after chats, we talk too long before and probably too long after. But hey, it's all in good fun. So we are here today for a very special episode. This month is Pregnancy and Infancy Loss Awareness Month. And I know that a lot of people have experienced this loss in so many different ways and have so many unique stories. And Shay and I both have had pregnancy losses. But Shay has a special story about a pregnancy that had a fatal birth defect. And I really want to make sure that we take some time to focus in on that part of her story and give that piece of her story some special attention. So today, let's start with talking about where it all began, your love story with your husband. Let's talk about how you met and how you decided to start all over again. Because for everyone who remembers, you both came into this marriage with a child.
Right. So our love story starts with a swipe right. We're one of those Tinder success stories. I was going through a crazy divorce. I was in school full time, working full time. One of my girlfriends is like, you really need to dip your foot in the water. Like, you need to kind of get out there, you know? And she's like, it doesn't have to be anything serious. Just, just see what you're working with. And I'm like, heck no, like too busy, school, kid, divorce, like no way, I'm a hot mess. Like, no. So we betted on motocross and I lost. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll just make a profile, but this is like, don't expect anything out of this. Like, I'm always, solo plus zero to anything you invite me to. So I'm on there and it was a different dating game, of course. And this is at the point where Tinder was like starting to go crazy and it was becoming a hookup site.
Yeah.
So, I put in my profile like I'm not here for, one night stands. And, swiping along lots of lefts, I come across my now husband's profile and I thought it was sweet. He was like going through divorce, like I have a 2-year-old daughter, like I'm not here for an instant wife or one night stand. I'm like, okay, cool. We kind of align, swipe right, whatever. We started chatting, of course, and I'm like, you know what? This is cool. It's someone else who's kind of going through the same things I'm going through. So I didn't expect anything out of it. I was very like cautious to meet. Like I talked to him for weeks, but it was like an instant, like we hit it off. And the whole time I'm still going through therapy for my divorce. And I'm telling this therapist, like, who is this guy? It's too good to be true. Like, what is this? Like, this isn't real. Like, this doesn't happen. The more we got to know each other, we realized, oh my God, we got married same year, a week apart. We separated from our spouses literally a month apart. Like, there were so many like parallels in our life. We grew up at an address was the same exact numbers. Someone in his family like founded a very famous river that is also the same name of the town I grew up in, which now our son's named after, of course.
Wow.
But like all of these, like his stepdad's badge number was the last four of my phone number. Like I had spoken to him on the phone years prior doing an errand for my husband. Like it just was like all of these things were like, whoa, what? Oh my God, what? Like too good to be true. So needless to say, we hit it off. We are like the same person. Just he's the male version of me. And he's a little more down to earth and centered. He's not so crazy like I am, but that's not saying a whole lot.
We all need that counterbalance.
Exactly, yin yang. So yeah, we hit it off immediately, and it's a love like no other. It's like, from the day one, like it just felt like too easy,
Yeah.
and 10 years, we're 10 years out now, and I'm like, okay, it hasn't been easy.
Sure.
We're here. Like, but I remember thinking like how I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, what is going on? Like my therapy for my divorce turned into therapy to be accepting of love,
Yeah.
you know? So it was crazy that we met and had the same tastes and everything.
So the decision to have or start a second round of a family happened before the marriage. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So we had, of course, here we are adults here, having accidents. And we had a really big loss where it, I was pretty devastated. It was probably about a year, a little over a year into our relationship. And I was so devastated that I blame myself. Had legitimate PTSD from it. I thought it was me. I went through all of that. My body wasn't working for me. What happened? Like, I didn't expect to be. Why? Birth control failed once again. But yeah, it happened.
Yeah, interesting. So you didn't have a conversation necessarily beforehand. This just happened
No.
and then it sparked in you this like, oh, actually I this is something I do want.
Right, yeah, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, my clock's ticking at this point." Like, again, from the last episode, like, I didn't even know if I wanted to have kids,
Mhm.
right? And then I had a kid because, again, like, birth control didn't work. Birth control does not work for me. Um,
Apparently.
Avi. So after that first loss, he's like, "Why why even put those things in your body? It's not going to work. Like,
Yeah.
we'll figure a way out. Like, don't do it, right? So we kind of were just like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, great. After that first really big loss, it took me probably a good 6 months to finally get better, because it gave me, I don't want to say PT, like I always feel like I'm being dramatic, but I was having like panic attacks
Mhm.
from it, because I felt so responsible, because I wasn't, watching what I ate. And I blamed myself for the amount of stress that I allowed to accrue in my life, because it was right at the point where my marriage, when we were together, I was still technically married, but separated, of course. And it was right as we were finishing everything. And that's when I lost that first
Mhm.
baby. I was like, this is not the time. And then I went through that whole wave of guilt. As you know, when you lose a baby, it's the waves of guilt. Like, you're trying to find blame, even, and trying to find the reason why, even though sometimes there's just not a reason.
Right.
And for me, I just immediately go to me. Like, it's my fault.
Mm.
I did something. I drove myself crazy about it. I was thinking night and day. I didn't, like, what did I do? How could I do it different? Why that poor baby didn't deserve to die? I went through all of those crazy emotions. I tried to go to counseling, and the male doctor looked at me and he's like, "So you're here because you think you had a miscarriage?" And I just remember, like, how unsensitive.
Mhm.
Don't even get me started on women's health.
Right.
But a therapist, and he's like, "Well, here you go. Here's 5 prescriptions. We're going to give you this so you don't have the panic attacks,
Mhm.
this so you can sleep, this to wake you up in the morning, this to be a mood stabilizer." And it was just like shoving pills down my
Yeah.
throat. And it didn't address anything. It numbed it, but I still thought of it. Like,
Mhm.
I still, you know, at that point, I ended up quitting the job I was at. I ended up just pulling back in life. Luckily, I had a savings and I had my husband, and I took that time to kind of heal.
Yeah.
So, but after that, so going a little more into our journey,
Mhm.
we had 2 more early, very, very early losses. It's like, I don't know for you, I don't know your story, but those losses where, you're pregnant and your body's starting to do that hormonal shift and
Mhm.
change, and you get that positive, and within a week,
Right.
it was over.
Right.
And after 2 of them, I was like, I cannot do this
Yeah.
again. Like, this is too hard. I can't lose another baby. I don't know if I'm going to survive losing another child.
Mhm.
And again, right back into that guilt cycle. Like, I was the one who caused this. I must have willed this to
Right.
happen.
Right.
And it ate at me for a while. So I finally was like, you know what? I'm done. We're not trying again. We're not even going to entertain it. So I'm going to track my cycles. We're not doing this. I take a pregnancy test, and it's just immediately like positive.
Ooh.
And I'm like in shock,
Yeah.
just literally staring at
Yeah.
this test, like, oh my gosh, like, okay, here we go again.
Buckle up. Yeah.
I remember telling myself, like, okay, don't get excited,
Right.
because we don't make past a week. I made a doctor appointment. At the doctor appointment, I was like, is there anything we can do? I started to get that panic feeling, like, what can we do? What is
Mhm.
there anything? She's like, no, you just gotta let it be.
Mhm.
Like, my prior pregnancies, we never caught before I had the loss. It was always like the after.
Mm.
So it was kind of like, okay, well, let's start documenting. We'll do a blood
Mhm.
test, um, and I'll have you go once a
Yeah.
week. So that way you'll know something's up before you don't,
Mhm.
and before it happens naturally. So I took that first blood test. My levels were great. I took that second blood test. My levels were doubled. I took another test, and they were just off the charts. So we were like, oh my gosh, we lost our grandfathers. Like, this has to be a silver lining.
Yeah.
This is too coincidental.
Right.
I'm 14 weeks. I go to the doctor. I am having a routine scan. I was having a little bit of spotting. So they called me in. They had me go in. And during the ultrasound, the OB's face goes, and I'm like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, nothing. Oh, nothing. And I'm like, no, no, you made a
Yep.
face. What's going on? You made a face. I saw that. And she's like, oh, nothing's wrong. Like, you know, everything's okay. And I'm like, She's like, the baby's heartbeat's nice and strong, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, no, you made a face. I saw your eyes get wide. I can read your body language. But okay, okay. And I think at that point, we went home and I'm like, don't get your hopes up.
Yeah.
I don't know what she saw, but it wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
I go to bed that night. I wake up and I go to the hospital and it was surreal. I was just in this fog and I'll never forget. I'm sitting there, like in a little TMI, like you're sitting there in basically a homemade diaper because you're hemorrhaging. And I'm sitting across the nurse's booth and I'm hearing how, oh yeah, my wife, yeah, we're having a baby and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, we know what it is. We got the email and we don't know if we should click it. My wife wants to look at it. And I'm sitting there like, can you guys read the room?
Right.
Because you just talked to me and I said, hello, I think I have a threatened miscarriage. Like, read the room, like be sensitive or have that conversation, not where your people in the ER can overhear that. So they call me back. They want to set me in a hallway and I'm like, not happening. You guys are going to have to do a pelvic exam.
Right.
No, we're not doing this. I need a room. I don't care if it's a utility closet
Yeah.
at this point. So it was just like one thing after another. I'm like, why am I having to fight so hard? And then I'm thinking, she saw something. She could have told me. She could have given me a heads up. Why didn't she say anything? So I get the ultrasound and we're chit-chatting and I'm looking at the screen, the baby, he's like, well, the baby's got a healthy heart rate. He goes quiet. And this whole time I'm texting my now husband, at the time wasn't. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can see his heart rate. I'm relieved. I'm
Yeah.
seeing the baby bring the thumb to the mouth, like
Yep.
all these little moments. And I'm like, but I can't see his face. Like, I don't know, like maybe it's just the angle. Like I can't see his face. So I asked, is everything okay? He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna get a couple more pictures. And like if you've ever had an ultrasound like that, that like it comes down
Mhm.
because if you've had the good ultrasounds that are all chitty chatty and oh, do you have any names? And this was not the case. So they put me in a different room. And I'm like, oh gosh, like
Yeah.
what's this about? Like, okay, am I gonna have a baby with Down syndrome? I can handle a baby with Down
Right.
syndrome. Like, is that it? Like, whatever. And I remember like going through these scenarios in my head of like, uh, whatever it is, is he missing a limb?
Right.
Or, I didn't know what was he at this point.
Right. Right.
Is he missing a limb? Is there a deformity? We can live with it. We're
Right.
unconditional love. Like this baby will have the best life. And the doctor comes in and sits on the bed and grabs the box of tissues. And I'm like,
Oh,
here we
jeez.
go. And she's like, I'm really sorry. Your baby's not compatible with life. And I'm like, what do you mean? Your baby has a condition called anencephaly where the neural tube didn't close,
Mhm.
very similar to spina bifida. Their brain didn't fully develop and they didn't fully form a skull cap and a cranium. And I'm really sorry, but your baby's not compatible with life. Here you need to follow up with your doctor. So I remember just sitting there like in this state of shock and she's handing me tissues and I'm like, I'm not even, not a tear. I couldn't squeeze a tear out if I wanted to. Like, this is it. Like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
what? Like, how did that happen? Like, and I'll never forget driving home. I didn't even, I texted my husband, like, oh, hey, I'm on my way home. And he's like, everything okay? And I'm like, we'll talk when I get
Yeah.
home. And I ran 2 red lights, I was so out of it, like, there's literally 5 lights from the hospital to my house, and, I walk in the door and I'm like, "Here it is. Our baby's not gonna make it." Um, and it was just I can't express to you how defeated I felt in that moment of, like, "Hold on a second." I felt something was wrong. I kept telling the doctor something was wrong. The doctor made a face yesterday during the ultrasound and told me everything was okay. and everything was going to be all right and not to worry about it. And I felt gaslit because I had these feelings inside. And now the baby's not going to make it. So, my husband it was like, okay, we need to go to the doctor ASAP. They got us in, I went to the hospital at 2 in the morning, got back at 7 in the morning. By 3 p.m. in the afternoon, we had another doctor appointment. And this time they ushered us to a perinatologist. And that was the point where, I think for me, she's doing the ultrasound. She's doing like an anatomy scan at this point from feet up. And um, I see that it's a little boy, and I just lost my mind because um, I didn't I didn't know I could be a mom. And when I had my daughter, I wasn't sure I was going to be a mom. And I most definitely didn't think I could be a good girl mom because of my relationship with my mother. And so I wanted to have all boys because boys are easy, right? Like, I don't know how to be a good girl mom, and that's far from the truth,
Sure.
thankfully. But here I am. I have a little boy, and it's just completely snatched away from me. So within that, they're when I ask them, well, what are our options? Like, is there a chance that maybe this is wrong? You guys have it wrong. It can develop. No, 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 no. You need to get an abortion, is what the doctor told me. The same doctor that had that surprised look on her face the day before is now, and told me everything was fine, is now telling me you need a DNC and we need to schedule it immediately. And again, where do these people learn their bedside manners? Incredibly unempathetic. And as a mom, when you're told something can't happen and then it happens and you think it's this just a miracle, like, oh my gosh, I'm walking around and there's a miracle growing inside of me, and then be told, just kidding, it's not going to happen. It really messes you up. And I would so we came home and we told people, and we just weren't prepared with how this all would have played out. And so we told everybody, and it was just mixed feelings all around. I got tired real quick after a day of telling everybody the story, so I made this post on Facebook, and I'm like, hey, just treat this like a normal pregnancy for now, like, because at this point a lot of people knew we were pregnant, but I didn't want to hear, how are you doing, how's the baby, is it a boy or a girl? Like, I wanted to get ahead of that. For the mental health of our family. We had to sit the girls down and tell them. And I think at this point I decided that there had to be more to be done than just a DNC. And coming from that medical background, I was like, well, what if we could donate his organs? Like, what if we could prevent another family from feeling the heartache that we feel now? So we sat down with the girls, we told them, and at this point, I looked at my husband and I'm like, I don't know where you stand on this. And I'm really sorry that I'm kind of taking the lead on this, but I am not going to get an abortion. And I'm like, it's really hard for me right now when the first signs of life, if you walk across somebody laying on the ground, what's the first thing you do? You look for signs of life, which are a heartbeat and bleeding or breathing. And you look for that heartbeat. And my son inside of me has a heartbeat. So who am I? Who am I to decide when it should stop beating? And it being at this point a second trimester abortion or DNC or whatever they want to call it. It wasn't even like an option that I could be induced.
It was,
So for me, it seemed very barbaric,
right,
to go in and basically rip this baby out of me that is very much loved and wanted. So I told him, I'm like, I'm really sorry. I can't go through with it. And I'm like, I can go away. If I need to go away, I'll go away for the next few months. Um, I can do this alone. It's totally fine because I understand I'm about to drag everybody through this nightmare, and he was like, no, 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 we're going to do it together. Whatever we do, we are going to do together. So we decided that we were going to keep the baby and we were going to try everything we could do to donate his organs and donate his heart. At this time I thought heart.
And it is the most personal of all decisions. I mean, you can't no there's no right or wrong decision. It's what's best for
Right,
you and what you feel in your heart is the right way to go, and both decisions are correct. So,
right, exactly.
yeah.
At this point, it was hard. It was a rough few months. The perinatologist that I had was just the absolute most wonderful. She had 3 other cases at the same time. And this was something that they say, oh, you see one in 20,
Yeah.
right? 1 in 20 years. Like, this is very rare. This is like 1 in 300,000, 500,000. Like, it's not common. It's rare.
Yeah.
And, going back through my pre-med classes, I remember seeing, like, to this day, I can remember the picture in the textbook. It was just this little blip, like, and it showed a picture. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that could happen to me.
Yeah.
Like, never. So the perinatologists, they were really great, good people, connected us with that same organization where the head honcho guy said they couldn't do it. They hooked us up with a nurse that stayed with us for the rest of the time. So at this point, this is all happening in November, right before Christmas, right before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, we didn't participate. I told my husband I can't be around people
Yeah.
because we found out on Veterans Day. I'm crying every second of every day, like I'm just beside myself. So we go have Thanksgiving fishing in a
Yeah.
local lake, just being one with nature, and kind of just digesting, because we still, at this point, it's 16 weeks, we still have a few more weeks to make the decision. At this point, we could do a induction. So, of course, that wasn't, once I have my mindset, it's set, it's not changing.
Mhm.
But my husband, hey, are you okay? Are you sure? Is this what we want to do? He was so, oh my God, amazing and supportive. So we get to the point where I'm still getting the infusions. I'm still just trying to make peace with it. It was really hard going out, in public. Oh, you're pregnant. Congratulations. And it's like, thanks, and you
Yeah.
have to, like, swallow that lump in your
Yeah.
throat. And I remember a lot of our close people around us knew, our employees knew, and everybody, they were so kind. But then we'd get that one-off friend that would come up and it'd be like, oh, wow, I bet, what are you having? And we're like, oh boy, oh, I bet he's so excited to throw a football with him and teach him football. And then it'd be like, well, he's not gonna have a chance to do that,
Yeah.
and then we'd have to have that hard conversation. So it just didn't come as a surprise later. So we get through the pregnancy, and at this point, nobody really, I remember going through feeling alone. Like, nobody talks about this. No one talks about these journeys. And while the hospice workers had connected me with an organization, there was an organization called Isaiah's Promise, and they would send us, like, packages every, like, month, and it would have, like, books for the kids on losing a baby. It would have little bracelets with his name on it. For Christmas, I'll never forget, they sent us, like, these handmade ornaments with his name. So, like, along the way, they were helping you make memories. They sent us a handmade christening
Mm.
gown made out of donated wedding dresses. Just
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful stuff. They did send us a box right after he was born that, to this day, we still haven't opened. It's with the box of his things. Eventually we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
We get to the point where it's about time to have baby. And I'm like, okay, well, after doing all these groups, and I'm in like 20 different Facebook groups where all these moms all over the world are going through this, and they're telling their stories, and some of their babies are living. At that point, there was a little girl who was 4 years old. Like,
Wow.
the skin grew over her head, and she was 4 years old, completely breathing machine, feeding tube, the works. So just to kind of clarify what anencephaly is, anencephaly, and for him, in his case, right here is where the development stopped. So he didn't have this part of his head or brain. It stopped. So in those very early days of development, there's the neural tube, and they close at both ends. One's the top and one's the bottom. This is the severe neural tube defect for anencephaly. Spina bifida is also, it's the same thing, it's just on the opposite end.
Okay.
And that severity differs, but with the scope of that diagnosis, they almost always survive spina bifida. There are those rare cases where there's conjoining defects, but with anencephaly, it's like a 99% rate
Right.
of death.
Yeah.
Like it's not happening. So,
And it can be in a lot of different ways where it's mostly formed, partially formed. There could be a full brain, partial brain.
yeah. And there's different cephalies, if you
Sure.
will, cephaly meaning head.
Yeah.
There's some with hydrocephaly, that's where the water on the brain and the
Mhm.
head. There's some where maybe the brain develops, but they do have skin. There's a wide range of scopes. And we were hoping that maybe we get the other end of those
Sure.
the scope of the cephalic diagnosis. But unfortunately, ours was really, really bad. Like he as we got the ultrasounds, we saw the frog eyes, like
Yeah.
they kind of have like little buggy eyes. There was just nothing where his eyebrows were supposed to be. So with that, going to my OB, I was like, hey, I want a C-section.
Yeah.
I want to have a C-section. I want to have him. And for me, I'm doing everything I possibly can to get a few minutes,
Yeah.
or to
Right,
get,
because the
some
trauma
people
of a vaginal birth, I would think would be that would be it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
It was like I wanted anything I could
Yeah.
do that wouldn't think, because you'd think the vaginal birth would be like would hurt him,
Right, right. There's a lot of twists and turns and tight spaces for that little head. Yeah.
for sure. And I was told, no, sorry, that's too dangerous for you. And I looked at her and I'm like, that's funny, because my girlfriend's on her third baby right now.
Right.
And you guys are signing her up, and she's getting to pick the date and the time. And so because my baby's not compatible with life, that's just it. Like, no. And she's like, well, it's a risk to your health. And I understand, but wouldn't having a vaginal birth be a risk to my health too? Because with these babies, there's a lot of complications that arise, shoulder dystocia,
Right.
where they get stuck because they don't have that natural reflex, and their body doesn't turn, and they get wedged. There's tears, there's bleeding, so you're telling me all these things, but wouldn't a C-section make sense for control? And I'm like, and here I am. I'm no dummy. I wanted to do surgery.
Yeah.
Like
You're
you
like, I
can't
wanted to be doing these things.
you can't medical phrase me.
Right.
Like, I've done all the research, and there's no duping me to tell me what's convenient for you. So they would not budge on that. Like, they couldn't get it approved. Like, it was a nightmare. But it was one of the battles that I'm like, I'm just gonna. I'll probably end up having a C-section anyways, right?
Sure.
Let's just hope it's for.
Yeah, let's
Let's
fight this
just
in the
hope
moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's not, and we'll just put out those good intentions that it's not for bad. It's not an
Emergent,
emergency,
yeah.
really bad reason. My life's at stake at this point. It took a while for him to be born, and at that time, when he was born, he had already passed. So it was hard because I had expected
Right.
to have even a minute, and I think I was just so like loopy from the drugs and everything. Because at this point they were giving me Benadryl to sleep because I couldn't sleep, and they thought the sleep, because I wasn't sleeping, my body wasn't relaxing. It was like my body was doing everything it could possibly do to hold on to this baby.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do as a mom.
Yeah.
When you have something that you want so badly. So he had passed, and of course, it took a long time for them to fix everything. And we got to have time with him. Um, we got to have a few hours with him. And after being told so many times that he wasn't going to be big enough, he was almost 6 pounds. The doctor said he would have been 9.5 pound baby had every bit had been developed, and they were able to accept him for organ donation.
Fantastic.
Um, so he ended up being in the hospital and with that organization, the first infant organ donor, um, in that San Diego hospital. And they were so kind and gracious that they had to do it quick. Everything had to be quick to preserve the organs. So we didn't have a whole lot of time in the beginning. But they brought him back to us after, uh, you know, after they took his lungs for cystic fibrosis research, and then they took his 4 valves of his heart for transfer. So they brought him back to us. The hospital gave us something called a coddle cot. So if you or anyone's going to experience a loss of a baby, or you know in advance, ask for it. It's like this little basically cooling system, so that it keeps the baby's body cool to help mitigate the rapid breakdown after death. And it gave us quite a few hours. We were super grateful for. Our girls were able to meet him and hold him for a moment, and then it gave us the time to say goodbye. And then when we were ready, we got to walk him down through the back with the nurses and hand him over. But yeah, it was such an incredible, surreal time, and you just can't prepare for it. Yeah, there's nothing you can do
Right.
to prepare for this type of loss. It's just devastating. So that's kind of where his story it doesn't exactly end, because again, I haven't reached out. So this year he would have been 6 years old. It was the 6th year anniversary, and I haven't reached back out to the Organ Donation Foundation, um, because we haven't been ready. My husband especially took it really, really hard. Um, that we don't know what happened. And in order to know what happens, it has to go both ways. And it's hard with babies, because the receiving end moms sometimes feel like selfish. They go through a whole slew of these emotions of like, I took life from their baby.
Right.
And so we did say that we were open to find out, but that we would reach out first. So maybe in due time we'll find out if it worked, or if it didn't, because it's not just because you donate organs doesn't guarantee that there's a transplant or even a successful transplant, because they have a pretty narrow window of time where it needs to happen. So yeah,
What was his name?
his name was Brian, baby Brian. Yeah.
It's special.
So thank you. So yeah, we've come a long way since him. After him, I was definitely never having babies again. Um, yeah. So now we knew the secret sauce, if you will, like to conceive a child was, well, my husband couldn't take testosterone
Right.
therapy, you know. So it took me about 2 years before that it clocked a tick again. And with that, we went through all the genetics. So they said it wasn't a genetic thing. It wasn't
Yeah.
it it wasn't inherited. It's just a by chance thing. They think it has something to do with folic acid or folate being the natural form of folic acid being the laboratory made. So any pregnancy after that, I would have to be on these skyrocket amounts of folate.
From what I read, there's nothing you can do to cause this. It
No.
just happens, and it's unfortunate,
Yeah.
but with, like, so many things that we can't cause, there are things we can do to help mitigate it, and folic acid or folate is the number one thing you can try to do to help prevent, but that doesn't mean that
But
because you
that doesn't
didn't do it, you caused it.
Yes.
It's
And even still, there's not a whole lot of research done, or, I shouldn't say research. It's not that the want isn't there, it's the funding and the
yeah.
money to go to that, because it's one of those lottery type things. Like,
Mm,
you can't know. And it's kind of like Down syndrome. Like, they say, well, if you're approaching 40s or you're a geriatric pregnancy,
right,
the chances are higher, but that doesn't mean that,
that you caused
a
it.
20-year-old couldn't have a baby like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of things we don't know, and don't know the causes of.
Exactly.
Um, so for us, after him, when I finally decided, like, okay, let's get married,
Yeah.
we'll try again. Back to back losses, very, very early losses. Um, and then with my son, I wasn't taking those things. I don't like to take any vitamins or anything like that. I'm just very kind of natural. I'll get it from my food. I eat very healthy.
Sure.
So with my son, I didn't take any of
Mm,
that. I might have taken it for the first couple weeks, but I didn't, and he's perfectly healthy. And the next one, perfectly healthy.
right.
And that's coming from telling for every pregnancy after, your chances increase. So the first, I think you have a 20% chance, a 10% chance the first pregnancy, a 20% chance. So after having a baby like this, your odds are much higher to have a
Mm,
baby like this. There's some women that were on their third baby, third in a row.
wow.
And it kind of almost makes me feel like, is this an environmental thing?
Mm,
Like, it's something we're eating, because it's not exactly, folate is not a
right.
guarantee of a baby being not healthy or healthy. I think it's got to be something else.
Right.
And I'm hoping in the future we can, as a society, devote more attention to things like this and try to figure out where it's coming from to mitigate the devastation that it causes
Mm,
on families.
mhm. And what made you decide to try again? Just time? Courage?
Just time. Yeah, my clock ticking, and
Mm.
my husband was like, okay, whatever you want, whatever. Yeah, okay. Like, but not like that, just to my
Yeah,
face.
yeah,
He's like, I understand. Like, very patient, very kind, very, it's okay, honey. Like, I get it. We have two beautiful girls. Like, if you don't want, that's fine. And look at how early we get to travel, because we had
yep,
our girls in
yep.
our early 20s. Like, we're going to be young grandparents and young, and then I was like, okay, maybe we'll try again, but I just don't know, we'll see. And again, when he stopped his therapy back to back, like, I'm getting pregnant,
Yeah,
so I'm pretty fertile still.
yeah.
And yeah, it just so we're not going to be young grandparent. Well, we might
You
still
might
be, but
still, you don't know.
we'll probably have teenagers at home.
Right, right.
But he's like, I always knew you'd change your minds. You love being a mom, and you're great at it. So he's like, I just was gonna be patient, just like I was with the whole marriage thing. My poor husband, I just make him go through the ringer, I guess, with my stubbornness.
Yeah,
And then I always end up folding.
I'm
So
sure he loves you for that. What do you
probably.
do anything special to honor him?
Every year on his birthday. So I don't know if you caught my post on social media. So there's this little mountain town called Julian, and on his father's side, his family helped found it or built the town, or there's some history there. So that at the cemetery there, it's a very historical cemetery. His family has a plot there, so
Oh,
he has. I don't want to say he's buried there. So this is where we're kind of, we bring the humor into this, and I'm really sorry to be insensitive, but his headstone's there, but he's still on our bookshelf
okay.
because we can't.
Yep,
It's still that, like,
yeah,
like, we can't bring him there yet.
yeah,
Like, our baby's still on his urn, that, still in the bag
yeah,
that we had picked him up from the
yeah.
mortuary. Like, so we always joke, like, that on his birthday every year, and Mother's Day too, because his birthday's May 11th, so it always falls Mother's
Mother's
Day
Day.
weekend, if
Oh,
not on Mother's Day.
yeah.
He was born, and then Mother's Day was the next day. Um, so we always joke, like, we go up there and we visit the headstone, right?
Yeah.
So we have the motions. We go up there, at least every, like, once a month or 2 months,
Sure.
when it snows up there, we go clean it up. In the summer, we go clean the headstone. And then we always, like, sing happy birthday and take a picture, and and then we all start laughing because we're like, he's not
He's
even
not
here
even
with us. He's at home on the bookshelf. Like,
he's missing his own birthday party.
we're like, oh, we'll show him pictures when we get home.
Yeah.
So, we try to keep the humor, I guess, if you will. But it's really funny because Grandpa was up there too for a long
Yeah.
time. So it was like, we had a new housekeeper, and I was like, okay, so there's one shelf in the house we do not
Yeah,
want
don't
you to
touch it.
touch. And she's like, oh, why? And we're like, well, so this is Grandpa and this is the baby. And she's like,
Ah.
needless to say, she
Yeah.
didn't clean our bookshelf ever.
Yeah.
So
That's one way
she
to keep
stayed
her away
far
from it.
But yeah, it's a crazy story, and I hope someone can find. You're not going to find comfort.
No.
It's you're not, but you will feel a little less alone. Um, and I mean, if you're on Instagram and you're going through this, please reach out. Not everybody wants to talk about it, but I am one of the people that are like, no, I don't want people to feel how I felt. It's
Yeah.
like, whatever we can do. I was so scared that another mom was going to feel that devastation of a loss, that I pushed so hard for the organ donation, because if we could have prevented that, I wanted to be that. I wanted him to live on, and what better way, what a better honor, if you will. So yeah, I mean, I just encourage, if it's not me, if it's somebody, like, talking about it, we need to do more of, because I feel like our society, it's not as taboo as it was maybe 10 years ago or even 20 years
Mhm.
ago, but it's still not out there enough. Infant loss
Yeah.
and pregnancy loss is, we have a special month for, but it's still just rocking people's worlds in the worst kind of way, because as much as we teach in schools, we teach sex ed and the birds and the bees and all, we're not talking about taking care of our bodies and being healthy and pregnancy
Right.
loss. And I think we're doing a disservice to our young people who are in schools, and we're not talking about that,
Mhm.
because it happens. I mean, the more you talk about it, the more someone's like, me too, me too, me
Mhm.
too, me too. And you meet all these women, and it's like, then why are we not having these discussions?
Right.
Why are we not? Why are we not more open? We should be celebrating that, the fact there was a life created. Now, it wasn't on the timeline that we wanted. It wasn't, I would much rather have my son here, but that just wasn't his story. That wasn't what it was meant to be.
Right.
So yeah, I think we should talk more about it.
Absolutely. You are an inspirational woman, Shay. Thank you for being
Thank you.
here. Thank you for sharing
Thank
this
you.
story. It's so important and so powerful.
Thank you.
You are brave.
Thank you.
If you have a story about motherhood that you'd like to share, please reach out to me, boldlittleminds@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at boldlittleminds. And definitely reach out to Shay if you have a similar story or you feel like you want to connect about this. I know she is very happy to talk about it with you. Please take a moment to subscribe, leave a rating and review, and please share with your friends and follow me for more episodes with inspiring moms with great stories to tell. Thank you so much. See you next time. This is the end of the abridged episode. To hear more about Shay's story, please join me over on my Substack. The link is in the show notes. You could also listen to the full-length episode as well. The bonus episode contains some great details, like the sweet story of how she told her daughters that she was pregnant, and the story of how Shay found out she was pregnant after the back-to-back losses of her and her husband's grandfathers. I hope you'll join me over on the Substack for the bonus episode. It's completely free to listen. You can listen to the audio or video versions. You could also read the text-based blog summary of this episode. Over there, you can subscribe for free and have the episode sent directly to your mailbox every week. Thank you so much for listening.